Hello, welcome back to A Spiritual Ascension, my 5-year journey. This is where I tell my entire story, life story, and especially the 5 years that it took me to go through my ascension journey. It's nothing quick, it's nothing overnight. As many people would make you believe, it takes a long time to go through your journey. So when I left off yesterday, I was telling you about my son and my father coming through um, by a psychic medium through that helped me to understand that they were still here, just without the flesh. So just a little bit more. I noticed yesterday when I ended that there's a lot more that I need to give you background on. And telling you a little bit about my son. So, interestingly, that he was born on July 7th of 1988. So, if you think about it, a lot of spiritual signs have to do with numbers. The divine uses numbers to give us signs and signals about different things, aspects. Most people, when they are first awakening, usually see 1111, right? Something to note, my shoe size, which is embarrassing to say, is size 11. So I have 2 feet, so 1111. So I think that was kind of interesting when I started putting a lot of things together as far as numbers. My son, again, his birthday is 7/7/88, and he was also 7 pounds, 7 ounces. So a lot of sevens going on there, which a seven is a divine number. You think about everything as far as with the Bible, 7 days, a lot of just sevens within the Bible, right? Um, So I knew he was special in some way. Not so much that I didn't know anything about spirituality back then, but I just his numbers being, 7/7/88, and him also having his birth weight of 7 pounds, 7 ounces. Um, he was like the most perfect baby when he hardly cried. I could just lay him down in a crib and he would put himself to sleep, just coo himself, sing to himself, wake up singing in the morning. When he's 10 months old, he got a really high fever that went up to 106.4. If you add up those numbers, 1 plus 6 plus 4 equals a number 11. Okay. I am a numerologist also, so everything that I do, I think about the number aspects of everything. Um, I was in a hospital with him for 5 days. Five is talks about changes, right? Um, and they just kind of classified it as being a virus. They gave no other explanation. They actually had thought he had, I forget what it's called. They had to do a spinal tap on him, but I forget what the disease is called. But he didn't have that. It was a high time also in the 80s. They thought it maybe he had AIDS. And, they tested him for that. But since it was such a high fever, also, when I brought him home after 5 days, he changed. He seemed to change. So all of a sudden he was having very severe tantrums. And those tantrums kind of escalated as he got older. And sometimes it was very hard to control him. If I went out to the mall or take him out in public and he would have a tantrum, it was, really embarrassing, but also just I couldn't control him. So I would have to end up, just leaving and going home. As he got older, also now you have to think he's becoming a man, and the tantrums are kind of more severe and kind of out of control, where his older brother had left to go to into the Marines. And I was just home with him by myself. He had was still in school, graduated, was working, but and had a girlfriend. And I didn't find out till later that actually his girlfriend had gotten pregnant, but I guess she had terminated the pregnancy, and I had no idea until after, years later. And so now I have a connection with a grandchild who is in spirit that I've never met or knew had existed before previously. Um, the thing is, he also knew he needed to get away from the area because once he broke up with that girl, he wanted to kind of change his life, and he decided to go off to Philadelphia to go to college and was doing well there. In the meantime, I had moved to New York. The Actually, last time I saw him was on August 1st of 2007. And I had just moved to New York, and he was getting ready to have his orientation for going into his college in Philadelphia. So I took the train down to Trenton, New Jersey, and met him there. And we drove down to Philadelphia for his orientation, and then he drove me back. And I got on the train, and that was the last time I saw him. Um, and then he passed away in November of 2007. And weirdly, it was 11/10 of 2007. And I always say he was one day short of 11/11, or one day short of like almost perfection. You know what I'm saying? Um, if you know numbers, you kind of know what I'm talking about. But as I've done another video on losing a loved one, there's a very close correlation between losing someone who's very close to you and then having a spiritual awakening, because that person usually becomes very important in your spiritual transformation, in your awakening process, and possibly becoming one of your major spiritual guides on your path. And that's exactly what my son did. Not only him, but also my father. As I said in the last video, they both showed up and have guided me ever since. My father was very prominent in giving me very precise instructions on what I needed to do um, during my journey, but I didn't know at the time that I was even going on a journey, or also that I hadn't even conceived of the concept of a spiritual awakening, knew nothing about spirituality, was still kind of hooked to my past religion. So it's kind of interesting that my father, who passed away in 2003, in spirit, there's no human ego to hold on to, or so he was able to see me for who I was as a human, but also to see who I was supposed to become, who my soul was, what my soul was supposed to become during this lifetime. And because he was part of that contract of my choosing to go on this spiritual journey. Hopefully that makes sense to you. As you go along, you'll kind of probably understand more. Uh, Let me see what else I wanted to say about my son, my father. Probably later on, I'll get into more about how your family can become very important, or loved ones who have passed on your journey. That's why it's important too for you to connect with the divine and to understand that you should listen to your intuition and whatever the divine is trying to tell you. Not only did my father and my son come through to me to give me instructions, but my maternal grandmother, who I have received my gifts from, have been passed on through the line, come through her. And I didn't know that till later on. I'll tell that story a little bit later. Um, but also my maternal grandfather, who I had never met, who had passed before I was even born, came through and said to me that I was the one who pulled you out of that religion. So he was the one instrumental in helping me, a spiritual guide to help me to pull me out of that religion. And in the next video, I'm going to go into how I ended up leaving completely religion and seeking out spirituality. Um, what else? My grandfather, and then later on, my grandmother came through. I'll tell you that story too. My paternal grandmother and my paternal great grandmother, who I, of course, had never met, came through, Annie. And just like people that I had heard about, your ancestors, who, if you are spiritual and spiritually minded, you always know that your ancestors are the ones who are coaching you through, are very important to your spiritual journey. But to actually have these ones come forward and say, we're here to help you go through your journey was absolutely astounding. So I'm going to leave it here for today because I want to introduce kind of what broke me into seeking out spirituality in the next video, okay? If you'd like to spend time with me talking about your own journey or have questions about my journey, there's a link below to book time with me. Also, I have several courses about the spiritual ascension process, and that link is also below. Okay, and I'll see you next time.